Alright, EA Ermor turned 40. We missed with some site searching, as happens. This isn't a farmland, so it's kind of a long shot anyway. And then we have some agreed upon settlements here. Very sad to be giving up provinces. Less sad to be giving it up to Abyssia. So we had 6 PD here because we were expecting them to be dead, so we thought we'd be hanging on to this land. So we let them know, and yeah, burning ones can take out plenty of province defense. And then speaking of lands we were planning on hanging on to, this is very sad to lose a province defense dump of this size unsupported. But it is what we agreed to, and we have discussed at some length why we're taking this path. And then a bit of a bright spot in the Niflheim-Yomi War, where they raid out, and it is against minimal PD, but here's a Dione. They do have like a decent stack of Oni left, so they still have some fight in them. And then also in the good news department, and part of why we are not fighting Agartha currently, is we catch some elves, and a fairly substantial elven raiding force. This is pretty much, this is our army right now. What we've been able to rebuild anyhow. I think we've seen the elf bless. Let's see if he actually... Yeah, it looks like he didn't manage to bless everyone. If he did, yeah, here we go. Yeah, we've seen this bless. He's got, the dark vision, which I like on these elves because they already have half dark vision. So with the bless, that gives them perfect dark vision and poison resistance, a little bit of reinvigoration. Kind of light for elves, but I think scales elves can absolutely work. However, because it is relatively light, we have a decent amount of province defense here, and we have overblessed our Equite of the Sacred Shroud, who sadly are on attack rear, so this maybe doesn't go as well for us as it could, although we do manage to snipe the commander, which helps a lot, because the elves rely on their better stat line, and when they rout they have worse stats. So yeah, that works out for us pretty well. We do lose 3 Equite, which is sad, but definitely worth trading for 17 of their Sacreds. Looks like we actually didn't kill the commander. He must have had flight on or something. He managed to retreat off. But still, we will definitely take that result, and I will catch you guys after the jump. Alright, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. We're going to try to double down and attack into TNN here, right? We just eliminated a decent chunk of their Sacreds. We've caught a few other raiding groups. They don't look particularly large. Ulm is doing, decently well. We know that they've been fighting 2 people, and they've also been fighting TNN on and off. So, we're going to take what we have, right, and move forward with it. We are going to move in kind of some reinforcements and or hold open our retreat routes with some more mages, right, and another army essentially. A lot of these mages, are twiceborn, so if we lose the mages at least, it'll actually kind of work out in our favor mostly. No upkeep for white mages. And white mages are a much better chassis in almost every respect compared to these Augur Elders, which, they don't set a high bar, but still we'll take it. So yeah, I'd say our chances are pretty good. One of the main things that TNN has is, they're pretty excellent Sacreds, which we were able to defeat. Granted, we outnumbered them heavily, but, their capital Olney, he probably doesn't have a ton left since, he's lost a few other groups in raiding and presumably has been fighting other people with them. TNN is also a strong air nation, so possibly, some lightning and thunderstrike, but I think we'll have enough units. We'll see. We still don't know a ton, about what their research priorities have been and what they might have. We are, trying to move around, some assassins actually in their lands. Elves are pretty tough to assassinate, so we're really kind of just using these guys more as scouts right now. And of course, it's also quite difficult to scout the elves, but if there is some non-elven stack of garbage that he has somewhere, we will at least see that. And that is really the main thing for this turn. I guess the only other thing that we're doing is we're bringing probably a little too much force to bear against this barbarian province up here. Granted, it is 110 barbarians, but we're going to go ahead and throw out Howl. We don't have a ton of nature gems to be spending. So in retrospect, I don't love this decision. On the other hand, we really don't want to lose all of this to a bunch of barbarians. So, I get where Past Me is coming from, and, the mage that's going to be casting Howl is doing some site searching, right, while he's out. So we are killing multiple birds with 1 stone, but perhaps wasting some gems in doing so. And then in terms of the Niflheim-Yomi War, it doesn't look bad for Yomi, but I think it's a little deceptive, right? Because Niflheim has taken this fort Granted, like Yomi has it under siege, but it's not cracked, so there's a good chance there's just a thug on it. Which maybe this is the force that we saw in the battle report. So like maybe they were coming to crack this fort, but this is Yomi and it's under siege and it's cracked. So that looks bad. And then they have another fort up here that's under siege. Granted, this one's not cracked, but yeah, Yomi just doesn't really have many, if any, free forts. And they are a free spawn nation. They definitely have like what look to be, some Oni pits. So, maybe they will still be able to collect enough Oni to throw Niflheim off, but despite the fact that their territory looks relatively intact, I think they could be in trouble. On the other hand, if Niflheim loses this battle, and we can't see all the provinces that surround Yomi, but we don't see any Niflheim, provinces on the side that Niflheim is. So it's entirely possible that Niflheim has no retreat routes and is just kind of all-inning on this. And if they lose the battle, or even if they have a lot of retreats, but still just barely manage to win, and they don't have any retreat routes, that could be pretty devastating. So I would say Yomi is in trouble, but not out of it. So anyway, we are moving scouts into position, to try to catch some more of that war. And then research-wise, we are trying to finish out Construction 6 for our lanterns, and then we're also going to go up to Enchantment 6. Enchantment 5 gets us our skeletons, which we do like since we have a decent amount of death. Enchantment 6 is maybe a little more questionable. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. There are definitely some nice spells here, but we are mostly looking at Eternal Pyre, which we don't really have the fire income for yet, but we do have a few plans as to how we could pull that off. So that's kind of the thinking right now in terms of research, and I think that covers turn 40. All right, EA Ermor, turn 41. We twice-born another one of our mages. Still undecided on this in terms of how much twice-borning you should be doing. I think in this game I probably did a little too much, but yeah, I'm still not totally sure. I think how you spend your death gems as early age Ermor is important and a difficult decision. We miss with some of our site searching, but we do find an enchanted glacier, which actually lets us summon Yetis from it with a Water 2 mage. And I have to say, I don't love these sites. Just having a mage sit around and bring like one unit in a turn is often not worth it. However, in this case, I do think this is something that I should have taken advantage of sooner. Let's just say that the Yeti's stock will go up before the game is over. But of course, I did not have a crystal ball. So yeah, we lose another province here to Agartha, and we'll have to take a look. If I recall, I think this was actually a province we held, before the war, which we work out, as there was a lot of raiding back and forth. It's easy to lose track of that stuff. I think it was an honest mistake. Certainly, I do not recall any ambush or anything like that. And then we see that Russ is also interested in this stack of legitimately over 100 barbarians. So I get in touch with this player and let him know that, I am moving on those barbarians. I think it's this turn that we're moving in, so we're pretty much just in time / it is not impossible that we bounce with Russ, that we bump with Russ. And then we take a province from TNN, undefended more or less. And then there is a battle in Yomi where Niflheim is the attacker, so I'm assuming, this is a storm. And we've more or less seen this force from Niflheim. I think, this guy is a prophet, who interestingly also has a research item. I wonder if maybe he picked that up from some previous fort storming. We also have a throne mage here who's been given some earth gear, so, maybe like Legions of Steel, or I'm not sure what he's going to be doing with this earth casting. But definitely, a little bit more magic support, and then fairly geared Scrotty Thug here, who's also a hero. Another, kind of interesting. Not sure why this Nifl Jarl is wielding a Just Man's Cross. Maybe expecting like some undead or demons. Actually, what am I saying? He's fighting Yomi. Demons, of course. Excuse me. And some more like normal kitting that you see on Nifl Jarl. So a mixture of his sacreds and thugs. And then on Yomi's side, kind of down to it. Although what he does have is pretty powerful. Like he has a monolith here who sadly only has a research item. Monoliths only have one slot, so it's pretty hard to, gear them. But it is a giant rock with really high protection. This one has been given a ton of astral, so this is a very powerful astral caster. Also very powerful nature caster. No gems, sadly, on this guy. And if there is something that can get through a bunch of protection and a big stack of hit points, it's a bunch of Nephil Giants. So yeah, and I don't see any gems on these casters either. So this is probably unscripted. And we're going to get to see Niflheim just, chop apart a monolith, barring, I get stuff wrong all the time. But yeah, this looks like relatively low level evocation. Yeah, some frighten, shrink, which would be kind of amusing if it went off. He did give himself body ethereal, although actually, if I recall, I think these guys... No, interesting. So the Jarls do have magic weapons built in, but the Nephil Giants do not, and that is one thing that is missing on this bless. This bless is very strong, but it is also very defensive in nature. Not that the Nephil Giants usually need much help offensively, but, you can see that Body Ethereal is a real hassle, especially like they're actually only getting chip damage. I might have spoken too soon. Monoliths are a huge hassle to deal with. I myself have had a lot of problems with a monolith before, and it didn't even have the research for Body Ethereal when I had to deal with it. Now that said, I do think that once these Nephil thugs, and I say once they get in range, but of course, the low research on this monolith means he's pretty unlikely to kill any of these Nephil Giants, and they have a perfect surround on him, so the Nephil Jarls might not actually be able to connect, because they do have magic weapons. Well, not this guy, but the thugs, at least a few of them, do have magic weapons. But if they can't actually get up and connect, then, this battle will time out and Niflheim will retreat, which could be problematic. So let's go ahead and skip to the end, bail out, and see what happens. That said, there are some Niflheim units that had the Berserker axes. So if they have a Berserking unit, they might be able to pull it out. And it looks like that probably is what happened. Something, at least, was able to kill the monolith eventually. And I imagine it was probably that the Nephil Giants routed off and, one or more of the units, the thugs, were berserked. They were able to finish off the monolith. So that does work out, really well for Niflheim. But it was a little dicey, especially, too, we'll take a look at, his retreat path situation. But this is one of those things, right, where you look at the battle report and you're like, oh, yeah, easy win. And if you actually watch the battle, it's like, well, not quite. But still, this is pretty bad news for Yomi, and considering that this was their capital defense and it kind of looked unscripted, I think probably the player is, more or less given up at this point, which is understandable. And then, of course, we have some unexpected events. So we get some death in a province. I think this is the one we just took. And then, local lords are feuding. Great. I don't think this is a particularly valuable province, so it's not the end of the world. Yep, some more unrest somewhere. Misfortune. It happens. We finish our palisade. This is where our lizard shamans are. So, happy to get this closer to completion. And I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Kind of being cautious in the south with TNN. I really don't want to let the elves sneak in behind. So, we have a patrol going on here with, most of our units. We're also patrolling here. We are moving up a bunch of mages. So I believe these guys, are also twice-born. So we have a bunch of twice-born mages. I figured, this is kind of a golden opportunity for us to not risk too much and hopefully kill off, some of our twice-born mages, and hopefully they'll capture a few provinces as well. But really the main thing, right, is we need these guys to die and come back as white mages. So that's why they're all the way in the front and they're doing absolutely no defensive spell casting. Just make a bunch of skeletons. They either take the province or they die trying. So we've got this group raiding forward, and then we'll have that other group that'll probably raid in the other direction. I don't imagine that these guys will make it that deep in enemy territory, but that's okay. And then in the meantime, if any elves try to sneak through, we should catch them, and then that will hopefully put us in a pretty good position, right, to make the final assault against TNN's capital. And part of the reason for this caution We do have a bit of a tightrope to be walking, right? Because like I said, so this is the Niflheim situation. They did actually have one retreat route, so that wasn't quite as risky as I thought, but still relatively risky. So definitely have to hand it, to that player for going for it there. But as we discussed, while Yomi does have a decent amount of territory left, I think that this is going to collapse pretty quickly. And so Niflheim is probably going to be looking for another target. There definitely are other people that they could go for. We can see Machaka up here, and then there's Ubar down here. This border has looked relatively stable. They actually even have a little bit of a border with Agartha, although that'd be a pretty awkward war for them. And we've talked about why we're worried about Niflheim. We share a large border. We have a throne on that border. So if you add to all those factors, we just lost a huge stack of troops against TNN. That might be enough to tip the scales in favor of attacking us. So that is what we're doing on the war front. We are bringing up, I think, a few reinforcements, with one of our mages, as well as some priests to bless our sacreds. Don't really have much in the way of recruitment. We're even, unfortunately, cutting a few mages this turn, and that is for a lab here on our Lizard Shaman province. Our upkeep situation is not in a good place, right? We have basically half of our income is going to upkeep. So in terms of an income upkeep balance, this is starting to get close to the limit of where I like it to be. So we need to either take more territory or reduce our upkeep. And of course, we're trying to do both, right? By taking some provinces with our expensive mages and then getting them killed so that we have them as, free skeleton mage upkeep. And then of course, the other thing that we're doing is we're trying to take this barbarian province. If I recall correctly, I think Russ was, more or less okay with me taking this, but, they weren't thrilled about it, and I wasn't 100% sure that we weren't going to bump, so we're going to bring in some flaming arrows support here from our nearby fort, and, I was complaining about my past decision, right, to cast Howl, but we also have to consider the possibility that we might be bumping into Russ. Now that said, we didn't actually bring enough gems to pull off 2 casts, which we really should have, because it's possible we fight the barbarians and then have to fight whatever Russ brings in. So yes, it makes sense to bring this level of support, but didn't bring actually enough gems to support 2 battles, so that's definitely an issue. But assuming that Russ doesn't come in, I think we'll be able to even though it is 110 barbarians, we should be able to handle that without too much trouble. Also moving one of our assassins up to kind of do a little bit of scouting. It looks like Sauromatia and Makone are probably fighting because this Sauromatian fort is completely cut off. So we're hoping to catch some of that conflict, and then it looks like Abyssia is doing at least a decent job of raiding back. There's still a Kalian flag up here, and it doesn't look like they've pushed too deeply into Kalim's territory yet, but they've more or less recaptured most of their core territory. So that war is, looking much improved. And it looks like Ulm is giving at least as good as they're getting in terms of the raiding war. I think this was an Ulmish flag last turn, so there's probably some raiding going back and forth. But this is Vanheim's capital. I think I'd said that Ulm was also fighting against TNN, and to be honest, it was never 100% clear to me. It seemed like Ulm had a lot of enemies. They were fighting a lot of people. But I think they actually mentioned specifically Vanheim and Femoria. And I do know from the future Femoria is down in this direction, right? And we see an Ulmish fort down here. So I don't actually think that Ulm and TNN have been fighting too much. I just sort of assumed that since I saw an Ulmish flag up here. But it looks like that was actually Vanheim's territory. So TNN is looking pretty small and definitely somebody that we could take out. And actually that Agarthan province that I thought they mistakenly took, no, that was definitely theirs. So never mind, ignore that comment for now. But yeah, I think that covers turn 41.